Are you kidding me with this? So look, I get it. The pandemic has triggered a lot of emotions in all of us, hasn't it? Could be fear, anger, confusion, disbelief. Maybe you have lost a loved one in the pandemic. Maybe you've lost your business. We're quarantining, we're masking, we're closing businesses, we're closing schools. And if your worldview is being shaped by the mainstream media, you don't know what to think, do you? You don't know where to turn for the right information to let you make decisions that make sense to you, to make sense in the world. Basically, if your news is coming from Google, Yahoo, New York Times, MSN, CNN, ABC, NBC, LA Times, Fox News, Boston Globe, there is a bias to everything we hear and read. There's an agenda, there's a political basis behind all of it. All the answers are right here. I read this book 40 years ago, reread it 20 years ago, then 10 years ago, and last week for the 4th time. This book, though written 71 years ago, is more apropos at this very moment in time than it's ever been. So look, I don't know how many of the media and medical world talking heads actually believe their world is coming to an end without vaccine narrative. I mean, some of them must think about numbers and statistics and ratios and living in the real world and how immune systems work, right? All right, imagine. I say Bob Jones in Major League Baseball had 75 hits last year. Do you want to draft him for your fantasy league? Who knows? Was it 75 in 200 trips to the plate or 500? Or perhaps the quality control manager at your widget factory comes to your office and says, "Boss, 65 units failed yesterday in a random testing." How useful is that information to you? 0? Was it 65 failures in 100 units or 65 failures in 1,000? Are you starting to see where we're going with this? Now to the COVID reporting. Well, how do you do this while avoiding a bench-clearing brawl over politics? I don't really know, but let's give it a try. Notice something interesting with these broadcasts. It's the same principle as with my baseball hits and widget failures. 5th grade math. Fractions, percentages, remember that stuff? How many times have you heard a baseball commentator announce, "Stepping up to the plate, Bill Jones. He has 72 hits this season"? Answer, never. There's simply too little information there to evaluate the batter. As you know, a batter's performance is measured by number of hits, yes, but number of hits divided by number of times at bat, otherwise known as batting average. 72 hits is great. If it came in, say, 220 trips to the plate, that's a 327 batting average. Awesome. But if it came in 400 at-bats, this guy's probably looking for another job soon. As for widgets, same deal exactly. 50 failures in 1,000 units, that's 5%. Maybe that's livable for the company. 50 failures in 100 units, we got big problems. Shut the line down and let's straighten stuff out here. It goes without saying that context is critical to our understanding of, well, just about everything. Clearly, neither number of hits nor widget failures as standalone numbers serve up enough data for us to do any situational analysis whatsoever. Yet when it comes to COVID-19, all that's just thrown right out the window, isn't it? Somehow we unquestioningly and dutifully just accept the predictions of doom and apocalypse delivered 24/7, day after day, by the media, medical, and politician talking heads. So here's a typical newscast you'll hear any day of the week on any channel. America reached an inauspicious milestone yesterday, surpassing 100,000 new COVID cases in a single day. Or, Experts predict huge surge in COVID cases within the next few weeks. So what's wrong with this, you ask? Well, let's start with the disingenuous use of the word cases. The word case in medicine implies illness, sickness, affliction, something that requires treatment. What we're really talking about here is positive tests. Huge difference. The stats reveal that upwards of 40% of all positive tests are completely asymptomatic, will never have a symptom, will never require any treatment. Beyond that, about 80% of the symptomatic cases are generally mild and are gone within a short period of time. It's a situation where you may feel crummy for a few days, you're a little down and out, you may have a little bit of fever, and generally speaking, that's it. Point number 2, probably even bigger than that, is no denominator. What? No denominator? Yeah, no denominator. No number of times at bat. No number of widget tests. No number of COVID tests. I'll bet that you haven't the slightest idea how many COVID tests are given in this country every day, how many total tests have been given. I couldn't blame you because it's never mentioned on the news, is it? Is it 100,000 tests a day? Is it 2 million tests a day? Let's crunch some numbers. Let's take fatality rate of COVID-19. These are numbers coming out of the CDC and are available here at covidtracking.com as you see above. Numbers date back to February of 2020. That's 10 months ago. So as of 12/9, we'll use for a random date. Total deaths attributed to COVID, those include probables as well, divided by total positive tests. We're going to crunch that out. Should give us numerator over denominator of a 0.0185 or 1.85% fatality rate. That's in folks 70 years and older. It's a very narrow segment of population, 90% of it. Now let's move on to just positive rate. How many people tested for COVID will come back with a positive test? Again, not a case. These people, many of whom will never even know they have symptoms, many don't need treatment whatsoever, therefore not cases. Disingenuous, as we talked about. So total confirmed positives, over 15 million of them as of the 9th of December, over the number of tests given, 209 million, 7.23% positivity rate. If you tested 1,000 people, you would find on average 65 to 70 positive tests. If you tested 1 million, you might find 70,000. I've been following these numbers for 6 months. They do not change. So again, the disingenuous use of the term cases is something I think is a big problem.
Thought I'd get outside in the beautiful fresh air. Great for the immune system, right? Best place to be. So, in March we were told that the case fatality rate of COVID was between 2 and 3%. And as we've just seen, those numbers are borne out today, 9 months later. In fact, even a little bit less. But here's some super great news. The numbers are actually much better than that. Let me tell you about Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, and I'm sorry if I butchered that name, professor of medicine at Stanford. He knows as well as any of us that an accurate denominator is absolutely necessary to determine an accurate number of cases and thus an accurate fatality rate. Months ago, he began testing what's known as seroprevalence, or the evidence of antibodies in the bloodstream to various stressors, in this case to COVID. Antibodies present in the bloodstream would reveal a previous infection. And what he found was astounding. There were about 50 times more infections than there were positive cases at any particular time. In other words, tons of people have been infected, didn't even know it. Their immune systems dealt with the virus as immune systems do, identified, destroyed, moved on, and then those persons generally thought of as being immune to COVID. Now, his published study was met with a lot of confusion and skepticism, but since his study, there have been 82 similar around the world that arrived at almost exactly the same conclusion, and that is 0.2% is the fatality rate of COVID, not 2%, not 3%. Now, the next question is, who's at risk? there's a huge variation. Well, it turns out there's about 1,000-fold difference in mortality rates between folks 70 years and older versus children. In fact, the danger of COVID mortality in children is equal to or less than the typical seasonal flu. That turns out to be the most important factor in the entire virus scenario, i.e. the older population is at an enormously higher risk than the younger. Additionally, not surprisingly, lockdowns are very damaging to health in many ways. In fact, the UN estimates 130 million additional deaths this year due to economic circumstances surrounding lockdowns. We're closing schools, we're closing businesses. In fact, we're forcing the younger population who's at extremely low risk to bear the burden of managing this virus. So vulnerability to death from COVID is 1,000-fold higher in the elderly population. These are the folks who need and deserve as much protection as we can give them. Those of us not vulnerable should immediately resume our normal lives. Go back to work, go back to school, go back to the outside, stimulate and challenge your immune system, and let's get back to real life. Do you not think it's fair to ask why the media, the medical talking heads, and the political talking heads approach this situation this way? I do. Anyway, wanted to show you this beautiful landscape. Love it out here in the snow, and follow me.
So we want to keep this message super positive like I always want to try to do. The body has an amazing capacity to heal itself if given the right tools, and what we need to do here is protect the vulnerable folks. I do not in any way want to gloss over terrible hardships that lots of people have gone through with this virus. But keep in mind that, again, it's a very small subset of the population that is at risk. And that is the very point here. Those are the folks who need and deserve all of our attention medically. We need to protect them against infection, as we should protect them from all means of stresses, viruses, flus, etc. The problem is we're shutting the country down. We're bankrupting businesses left and right. We're keeping kids out of their schools, out of social situations, keeping folks out of the fresh air, which is stimulating of immune support and immune building, etc. So my point is here, the body can heal itself when given the right tools, and that means good nutrition, that means low sugar, that means high quality fats, low refined carbohydrates, high fresh vegetables, exercise, sunshine, good water, nice sleep. I have other videos out there I'd encourage you to check out for a little bit more on that topic. So look, it's all good, folks. Keep yourself healthy, let your immune system do its job and protect you against this virus just like it does a billion other viruses every day. In closing, I teased this video a little bit with a mystery book, which we probably now have come to realize is George Orwell's 1984. We know 1984 as Orwell's all-time classic novel, which predicts a dystopian future in which Big Brother exerts total control over the populace, creating a removal of essentially all of our civil rights. Again, we promise not to get political here, but I would hope that the fear generated by this constant bombardment by the media, the politicians, and the medical groups over this COVID situation doesn't result in our giving up of all of our freedoms as we shrink back into our homes and under our beds into our hazmat suits for fear of coming into any contact with this virus. Stay happy, healthy, exercise, eat well, etc. Look at my other videos on the topic of good health. You know what? Let's all hope that this COVID-19 scenario doesn't eventually turn into COVID-1984. Until we see you again, yours in vibrant health, keep the faith, Dr. J.